Hello.
Hello.
I'm Brenda Allison, a bookseller at Barnes& Noble, and today I am so excited to be in conversation with Samin Nosrat. Samin is the author of the James Beard Award-winning and #1 New York Times best-selling Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. She's also the host of the Netflix documentary of the same name. Samin's newest work is called Good Things: Recipes and Rituals to Share with the People You Love. It is a cookbook, a manifesto, and a thing of beauty. It's available in stores now, and I'm very much looking forward to discussing it today. Samin, thank you so much for being here with us to talk about good things.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's so nice to be here. You know, I
Love
grew
it.
up I grew up in Barnes and Nobles.
Oh, yeah? Tell
Yeah.
me more.
Well, I grew up in San Diego, which is
Mm-hmm.
like a sort of like a collection of suburbs, you know?
Yeah,
And there I've always been like a little book nerd kid, and there were a couple
same.
there were a couple indie bookstores sort of
Mm-hmm.
near my like middle school and high school.
Yep.
They were mostly used bookstores, and we had Bookstar, which eventually sort of got folded in to Barnes and Noble, and we had
Mm-hmm.
a Barnes and Noble that was like in the shopping center nearest my house. So I would just get dropped off there or ride my bike there
I
and
love
just sort
it.
of like plop myself down and spend hours, especially during the summer. Like
Oh,
I would
yes.
just spend hours. Also because I didn't have tons of money, I didn't have like an allowance or anything. So I couldn't necessarily buy stuff, but I would look at like all of the types of books that I would never be allowed. Not because like just crafting books and
Oh, yeah.
um style, fashion, science fiction, fiction. Truly, like I read entire books sitting on the ground in Barnes and
Oh my
Nobles as
gosh.
a kid.
I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. Same. My family tells a story about I did not have my driver's license and I snuck my parents' car. And, I could have gone to a party, I could have gone to a boy's house, but I went to BNN when I was a teenager and did the exact same thing. So
That's
I
amazing.
love
Yeah.
it so much.
Totally.
So let's talk about books and food and all of these good things. I want to start with your inspiration, thought process, the story of how this particular book came to be.
Yeah, I mean, it was not a like a I wish there was like a tidy version of the story. Um, but originally, I don't know how much you guys talk on this podcast about sort of the process of selling a book to a
Yeah, sure. We'll
publisher.
talk about whatever you want
Yeah,
to talk
and
about. Yeah.
so for me, we sold the book when I was sort of at the height of the promotion of the TV show for Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat. I was just
Hmm.
sort of, and I had this idea for a book that would really be a companion to Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, in that it was where Salt, Fat is like sort of trying to translate for home cooks how professional cooks sort of decide how to cook and make decisions while they're cooking. This
Hmm.
was going to be a book called What to Cook, and it was going to lay out for people at home how professional cooks think about deciding what to cook in any given circumstance
Mm-hmm.
based on like a whole bunch of constraints that we all have, things like how
Right.
much time we have or what ingredients we have or what we're feeling like eating, or I don't know how many, like who's coming over and what their restrictions
Right.
are. But as I got to working on that book, it sort of dawned on me crushingly that it would probably take me another 20 years of like collecting information and distilling
Mm-hmm.
it and organizing it to really be able to make the book that I had in my mind, and that felt really overwhelming. So I sort of had a meltdown and I was like, I can't do this.
Right.
And I was like, take the money back. I don't want to write this book. I'll just
Huh.
live happily under my pillows and cry for the rest of my days.
Yes.
And and they said, "Oh no, it's okay. Like you don't have to write that book. You can write whatever book you want." And at the time I was really having like a big emotional sort of and personal upheaval. It was like smack dab in the middle of the shutdown. There was just a lot going on, and I felt so separate from, what had originally brought me to cooking
Mm.
and the spirit of cooking and why cook and why talk about this with people. It just felt so meaningless to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of like floated around in the ether for a couple years trying to figure out what I cared about, um and in the meantime people would tell me, "Oh, I don't know why you make it so complicated and have to, make these projects for yourself where you have to write like this huge philosophical tome. Like people just want to cook your recipes." And why can't you just make a collection of recipes like everybody else? And I would be like, never, you
Ugh.
know. And part of it felt like a little bit disingenuous for
Mhm,
my own self, like having written a whole book trying to teach you how to cook without having to rely on recipes. It felt like it would be
mhm,
insane to then follow that up with a book of recipes.
mhm,
But and part of it is just I have a very complicated relationship to recipes myself. But as time sort of passed, I sort of noticed, well, in the meantime, I've had this column at the New York Times for 4 years. People really do cook the things I put out there, and it seems useful to them. Um, and I wasn't so much in conversation with people anymore. I didn't have like I wasn't posting on Insta. There just wasn't a way I was having a relationship to an audience as much, and
sure.
so I felt like I would cook something delicious and be like, "Wow, if only I had a way to share this," you know?
If only.
And so finally I was like, "Oh, that's what they meant." Like
Mm,
this, I do have an instinct in my own self that
mhm,
when I find something good, in whatever way you want to define that. Like when I'm
mhm,
excited about something tasting good or being beautiful or smelling good or feeling soft or whatever, like my first instinct is I want to show it to other people and be like, "Hey, look at this." Like I want to share it, you know? And
right.
so that's what I wanted to do with these recipes. And so finally I was like, oh, maybe I can write a book of recipes and maybe I can make it my own, because that was another thing that had happened to me much earlier in my career was people had sort of been very clear, people in publishing had been very clear, like
Mhm.
there is a formula for cookbooks and
Oh, sure.
it is this many photos, this many recipes, this many
Yep.
pages, this many chapters. And I just the like idea of formula hurts me to my core because
Mhm,
everything I love about cooking is about it being related to the moment and
mm,
changing and a response to what's around you and what is in season. And so it feels like the opposite of a formula.
right.
So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to talk about this to anyone. I'm just going to keep a little notebook with me. And as I think of things that are delicious, that I cook in my daily life, that I share with the people, you know, closest to me, that I would want to share with you, I'll just start making a list and I'll see how long that list gets. And eventually the list got plenty long and I was like, I think I can do this. And so that is what became Good Things. And over the course of working on it and sort of really distilling the best things in my life that I want to share, like I also sort of was able to focus on why and what's the meaning of this. And you know, I've been cooking now over 25 years and
Mhm,
my relationship to food has changed so much over that time. You know, in the beginning, I just wanted to go to every restaurant and try everything and read every magazine and see what everyone else was doing and absorb it all. And now I feel like I have a whole big life with a lot of responsibilities, and many of the people around me have families and children. And so there's not exactly the same sort of bandwidth for um, culinary mastery
right.
24/7, right?
Sure.
And so it's like, how do I have a perfectly delicious thing? How do I translate these things that I learned so long ago in some of the best kitchens in the world and take what's at the core of them and share them with people, and why? And why I do that is ultimately like cooking is a way to share a piece of yourself and a piece of your most precious resource, which is your time, with the
Mhm,
people you love. And so that's kind of how I approach the things that I decide to make. And that is kind of the message of the book is like, this is a way to have relationship with people.
mhm. Well, you just hit on, like, so many of the things that I wanna talk about that I
Okay, great.
loved about this book. There's so much to talk about, and I was kind of like, "Well, let's talk about the elephant in the room." You, like, notoriously hate
Yeah,
recipes.
totally.
You've provided us with a cookbook full of recipes, and, like, to me, some of that was a lot of, like, the both and of life. You
Mhm.
know, 2 things are true.
Mhm.
You kind of talked about that a little bit already. Can you talk a little bit more about the
Yeah,
holding that contrast in your mind, in your work, in your life?
totally. And I mean, I do have a lot of black and white thinking of like never again, you know, only this. And I
Right.
think like my job as a human is to sort of find, yeah, that both and. That's such a beautiful way of putting it. And and I and so as I sort of realized, okay, I can do, I mean, for one thing, just to be clear, when I published Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, I had maybe published a dozen recipes before that, right? Like in just random articles for Bon Appetit or Martha Stewart that I had done,
Mhm.
like one-offs.
Mhm.
So I was not like a rigorously trained recipe writer.
Right.
And I think the thing I'm realizing about myself now even is I still would not call myself a recipe developer. Like, which I think is a very distinct skill, and I think that's a skill that a lot of the people who are publishing cookbooks or who are known to publish many cookbooks like year out, like Ina Garten. She's a
Yeah.
great recipe developer. She's been doing a book every other year for the last however many years.
Right.
And there are so many other sort of amazing people doing it from all sorts of different backgrounds now, right? Like just that we
Mhm.
get to experience on the internet.
Right.
And that is not, I would say, what my strength is.
Mhm.
And so it was one thing for me to like sort of catalog all of the things that I'd been cooking for close to 20 years when Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat came out, because that I had a lifetime, I had a career's worth of like greatest hits
Right.
where I knew them and I could sort of write them down and do that. But then when I sat down to do this book, I was like, well, I already put everything in that book. I'm not out here inventing new stuff. Like like that's not what I do. I just take the today we have carrots, tomorrow we have tomatoes, the next day we have cucumbers, and I sort of figure it out. But it's all sort of remixing and matching the same stuff. So let me teach you how to think about it rather than try to like individually write carrot salad with cilantro, tomato
Right.
salad with cilantro, you know? Um and so that sort of coming to terms with that about myself,
Mhm.
I think, or just being able to understand that has been a really helpful and clarifying thing. And also just, you know, I think I think I'm a real sort of like systems thinker and structural
Oh.
thinker, and in some ways like almost even though I'm in the food world, I think about it and what I do sort of in some ways like a critic does, like a critical thinker. And so there are ways where I hear, for example, poets. Like I did an event with Ocean Wong. I know
Oh, yeah.
you
Mhm.
interviewed him as well.
Yeah.
And you know, the way he sort of
Oh,
talks
so
and thinks
beautiful.
so beautiful, thinks about like what the constraints of the format of poetry
Mhm.
sort of hold him to, and how he challenges those constraints to try to communicate the thing that he's trying to communicate, right? In a way, when I like read some things that he had said about that, I was like, "Oh, this is how I feel about what a recipe does." Is like
Mhm.
recipe is a constrained format on a page, and it is not actually open enough, broad enough, expansive enough to communicate the thing, the essence of what I'm trying to communicate about cooking. And so if I can sort of let myself live in the discomfort of those
Mhm.
with the discomfort of those constraints, and sort of push outside of them where I feel appropriate and talk about that discomfort, I think I'll feel better. and so
Interesting.
and
Yeah.
so and so after Salt Fat came out, or yeah, around the time Salt Fat came out, I started working for the New York Times. And
Mhm.
over the course of almost 5 years, I really regularly was publishing. I had a monthly column, and in addition
Yeah.
to that, I did other stuff. And that in some ways was like a boot camp for me for writing recipes and
Mhm.
really interacting with the people who were using the recipes. So I came to writing good things much more as a much more skilled recipe writer,
Mhm.
and as a person who understood much better what it is that people find useful and can take away from a recipe. And so that knowledge was really helpful. And in some ways, I felt more confident to even write a book of recipes than I would have before without that training that I
Sure.
got at New York Times Cooking. Um, so that was helpful too. And like, but also sometimes I think in the book there are many different formats that I use, and one
Yeah.
of the books that I really loved that felt really inspiring for me and did that really well is I don't have it right here, it's downstairs, but it's this Canal House book called Cook Something by the
Oh, I
lovely
don't know.
Canal House ladies.
Mhm.
And they sort of use a variety of formats throughout the book where they're like, this is chicken salad, this is egg salad, and those are written in paragraph format.
Mhm.
But then there's other recipes that are written in classic format, and then there's lists of variations written sort of in bullet point format where it makes sense. And so that sort of emboldened me to do the same and to
Right.
use different formats where they made sense depending on how I use different ingredients.
Sure. In fact, I'm like thinking, jumping all around in my like notes, just thinking about like all the things that are here. Like there's a point you were kind of talking about Ocean Vuong and how he talks about poetry, and there's a point kind of near the beginning of the book. I don't remember if it's the introduction where you kind of reference like Yo-Yo Ma
Mhm.
talking about music,
Mhm.
talking about food, and it's I think there's this old saying about like dancing about architecture. Like you can't do it, but you try. And like
Exactly.
that's a beautiful thing you do throughout the book. And I've seen in some places you describe yourself not necessarily first as a chef, but as a teacher. Can
Mhm.
you talk about the importance of teaching in your life and how you think about learning and food and how those fit together?
Yeah, I mean, I was really lucky as a cook that I got to start at Chez Panisse in Berkeley, which I think really thinks of itself as a teaching kitchen above all else.
Mm-hmm.
And I really did get an amazing education because they cook every single day. The menu changes,
Right.
and every single day. So even, I mean, if you work there longer than a calendar year, you've gotten to work with every ingredient that comes into season. So the more years you work there, the more you like develop these habits and remember, oh, asparagus, like we always make that creamy asparagus mint pasta. Oh, tomatoes, we always make tomato and bread salad. And oh, that's how we make tomato vinaigrette. And the memory sort of like builds itself, right? The muscle memory like builds
Mm-hmm.
itself
Yep.
into you, and the taste memory and all that stuff. And I got to be there, for several years. Then I went to Italy. I worked in other
Mm-hmm.
restaurants, and I came back, and that really is the like base of my own cooking education. And so much I learn by doing.
Right.
I don't always learn by listening. I sometimes can learn by watching, but I really learn by doing. And I think it took me a long time of being in the kitchen to understand that, because everyone learns differently.
Differently.
And so that was something that was really important to me when I started at first teaching salt, fat, acid, heat classes, and then eventually sat down to turn it into a book, to try to incorporate that um, into the book as much as possible. So I learned that my students, some of them learn by doing, some of them learn by seeing, some of
By
them learn by
watching,
reading.
by
Right.
touching,
And
by
so
reading.
exactly. But I will say for most people with food, I would say a sensory experience is
Oh,
is
absolutely.
really like the highest version of something. So I always in the classes tried to do that, was let everything be hands on and give everyone sort of a chance to develop that muscle memory. And you can't do that in, by definition, if you're writing a book, because you're not. But you can
Right.
encourage people to do that for themselves. And so with the first book, it was really important for me to sort of offer a multitude of experiences. For example, there would be like I would write out, this is how you make mayonnaise. Here's the science of mayonnaise. Here, and I would write out a recipe for it. But then I would also, like a classic recipe, one egg,
Yeah.
1 cup
Yeah.
of oil.
Drizzle the
Yeah,
oil.
totally.
Yep.
Then I would write it in narrative format where I would tell the
Mm.
story of making the mayonnaise. And then Wendy and I would work together to make an infographic where it would be visually conveyed. So that
Yep.
depending on the type of learner you were, I was offering you as many chances to get that as possible. So we did that. I layered so much of that into that book,
Yep.
because knowing that people learn differently, and also everyone wasn't going to read that book like cover to cover.
Right.
So, and then I had the lucky, incredible, like amazing opportunity to make a TV show, yet another way to layer on, right? This,
Right.
this in education. So I do think for me, because sort of hand in hand with my like resistance to the like adhering to the recipe on the page,
Or
or
put
letting
me in
that
the
be
box.
the information I'm conveying to you,
Hmm.
I always sort of distill to what is it that I'm actually trying to teach you? Like, what's the message underneath that's the takeaway here? Because it's sometimes, sure, like I guess especially in baking or in desserts, you really do need that very specific, like this much this and that much that and 2 minutes this until it's this temperature. But in so much other cooking, the things that are going to be helpful are sensory cues.
The feel,
Hmm.
the smell, the texture, the
Exactly,
yep.
exactly. So like in a way that I felt really happy, on I think if you pick up good things and you flip through it, you're like, "Oh, it's a cookbook. It looks like a regular cookbook." But I snuck
It
in.
is more than a
Yeah,
cookbook. It
I
is way
snuck in
more.
a lot of that kind of thinking wherever I
Hmm.
could. And one place that I was really happy to sort of it clicked for me was I my style of cooking is really sort of rustic and using your hands as much as possible and making things
Ripping
look
the bread and the cheese.
exactly, and
Yeah.
making things look like, as much as possible like they haven't been too manipulated.
Right.
And so I sort of sat with that for a while and I was like, "Oh, like I actually tear a lot of things. I cut a lot of things on these angles. And actually, if I can teach you how to think about how a thing should look and how that actually affects the way it tastes and interplays with other ingredients, then that's a decision you can learn to make for yourself. And I can do it once at the beginning of the book instead of in every vegetable
Every
section have to be
time.
like cut green beans on an angle, cut asparagus on an angle. And so there's a section at the beginning like about eating with your eyes first and making these decisions, about how you're going to present something based on sort of what it is that you're after. And so that felt really like important to me to convey, and that was not something I'd seen in another book. And we did also get a lot of infographics into the sort of heart of the book, which I think
Oh
of as
yeah.
the vegetable
Salad
chapter.
matrices. Yep.
Yeah, totally. And so I wanted again to teach you this type of thinking of, I don't want to write out, oh, this is the only way I ever use eggplant, or this is the only way I ever use. I actually do these things differently every day, all summer long. And I want you to feel like you have the power to do that. So here are the things that matter. These herb combinations, like,
Hmm.
like these, so if I can sort of teach you the thinking, then you'll be empowered, to do it more. But the other thing I always sort of make fun of myself about is I would teach for a long time before I wrote the book, before I wrote Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat.
Right.
I taught these salt, fat, acid, heat courses that were like
Hmm.
multi-day. We would do it over the course of a month. Like every weekend you'd come and we do salt, fat, acid, heat. And it was all hands-on, hours and hours. I
Right.
think we would spend like 30 hours together. And the whole point was like getting you off recipes, right? Teaching you like this, use
Right.
your salt, all this stuff. And we would get
Right.
to the end of the week, end of the fourth day, and literally every single time people would be like, "Okay, where's the recipe handout? Can we please
Yep.
have them?" And I was always like, "What? What have I done wrong?" And I realized eventually I didn't do anything wrong, and you weren't doing anything wrong for wanting that. Like I just couldn't throw people into the deep end without
Right.
something. And
Right.
so if I started to think of recipes as like a gift or like
Ah.
training wheels for people,
Right.
rather than like this thing that I felt trapped by or that I was suggesting that you should feel trapped by, that I could let go of that a little bit, and use them as a tool, as like a teaching tool.
And maybe you can, now I'm just like thinking out loud here. You could think of it in like terms of like it could be a type of empowerment. I think I hear you saying, and I've seen in the documentary in your books, like you want to empower me, anyone who picks up the book, to make a meal for their family, invite their friends over. And I think if you were a person who was raised on recipes, you
Hmm.
might think, oh, I'm not capable. But
Totally.
maybe there's a way to like marry those two and say, I recently had a conversation with a girlfriend whose mother-in-law got married when she was in her like 19 and she didn't know how to do anything. She learned 3 recipes and that is all she has ever made.
Wow.
Right. And it like we felt sorry for her because my girlfriend and are both, we were raised by mothers who were much more like intuitive cooks and
Hmm.
like creativity and whatever. And but maybe what you're saying is, can we marry the two? Can we say
Totally.
you are comfortable with a recipe and I want to give you the tools to trust yourself, which goes farther than the kitchen, of course, to make those decisions.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that also is about like the choices that I make in what information I include in the recipe. So it
Right.
might look like it might look like a recipe that you could find anywhere else,
Are
but
used to.
are used to, but I
Yeah.
I work really hard to include a lot of sensory cues
Yep.
so that like it's not saying, "Oh, this is precisely at 3 minutes it'll be done," because also like it's not always the same for man, I've been making this granola that I've made for years, but I sort of am in
Is
a
it the
new.
granola from Salt
Yeah,
Fat?
the
Because
granola
that's the
from
granola I
yeah,
make and have
it's
made
so
for
good.
years. It's
Yeah,
so
it's
good.
so delicious. It's
Yep.
Nikizia Davis's like early bird granola recipe.
Yeah.
And I just sort of go through phases where like in the summer I like eating a lot of granola because all the stone fruit and I eat it with yogurt. So I've been
Right.
making it a lot and I've made it 3 times in the last, I don't know, month. And one time I made it in my work studio kitchen, which has a gas range. like in a
Mhm.
gas oven. One time
Yeah.
I made it at my girlfriend's house, which has like a dinky, just like an apartment, the kind of like Home Depot. It is a gas oven, but it's just like
It's like a
not a
rental
professional,
stove.
yeah, a rental
Right.
stove. And then one time I made it, the last time I made it at my house, where I'm sort of getting used to in the last year I got a induction.
Induction.
Yeah, so it's like an electric oven.
Mhm.
So I'm still getting used to it. So and my girlfriend came over, and she's like, "Wow, this granola is different every time." I mean, she was, and
But
I'm like
that's
different
life,
ovens.
right?
I'm just like
Yeah.
different ovens. I'm still getting used to, like, I'm still learning my own oven, and it is a little different every time. Like it's three
Right.
different places, three different batches of oats. I don't know, like it is,
Maybe the humidity's different.
totally.
Maybe whatever, the cinnamon's spicier. I don't know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, totally. And so it's just, I mean, it's also true for me, and I think part of it is I just actually have changed what my expectation of a recipe is. It's
Mhm.
not that it's going to deliver the exact same replicated result every single time.
Of
It's
course.
that it's going to lead me to a taste, or it's going to lead me somewhere, and sort of like get me there, and I have to use my own senses to get myself to like really get where I want to go. So part of the reason this last one was is like I probably set the timer a little too long, and I was distracted, and pecans got a little overburnt. But and that's on me. That's not on the recipe, right? Like it's
Right.
just an interesting, it's like I think my, yeah, what I expect from a recipe is probably different than what other people expect, and I think that was what I was trying to write toward in my introduction was, and even the quote from Yo-Yo Ma, which is, people, it was like I was listening to this interview where Terry Gross was interviewing him, and she was asking him sort of about the experience of, like, he's been playing those Bach cello concertos since he was 4 years old, and
Right.
I don't know, I think he's in his late
He's
60s now.
yeah, I was like, I think he's 70.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so that is a very long time to be playing the same pieces of music over and over again. He's recorded them and released like albums, I think 3 times over the last 60 years. And so Terry Gross was like, "What's up with that? Like, what's up with like 3 recordings of the same music? Or what's up with like what's your experience of playing this stuff night after night?" And he just gave this beautiful answer about it not being about sort of replicating the same thing every time, because it's never going to be the same. It's in a different
Mhm.
location. There's a different audience. It's, in a studio versus at a outdoor theater. There's just so
Right.
many different elements of it that his job is not to reproduce the thing perfectly like it's a photocopy image. It's to be present and sort of, he says it's like almost like stepping into this river that's moving and catching the current. And I feel like that's what we can hope for. That's the most beautiful thing that we can hope for from a recipe, because even I make apricot jam every summer.
Mhm.
It's like one of my most treasured rituals. And I get the apricots for the last several years, I've gotten them from the same farm, but every
Mhm.
year the apricots are different. And even this
Of
year we
course.
went there, and he's like, "Oh, I want you to try these ones from these trees." And even those ones from those trees taste different than those ones from those other trees. And so there is just this like beauty in the actual way that a flavor shows up in the moment. And that is sort of what I feel like we are so lucky to get to experience. And that's kind of the good thing I'm trying to get across to you. And if the recipe can be a tool toward that, then I'm
100%.
happy for it to be. But I don't want it to feel like it's like chains that you're
Right.
chained to or by.
Great. And now we're really getting to the book is recipes and it's a cookbook, but it's so much more. I think in my introduction, I said it's like a manifesto for life.
Mhm.
And it feels that way. We've talked here about that idea of like being in the moment. You talk about time and
Mhm.
your realization that like time is like the one non-renewable resource we
Mhm.
have. You can't
Yeah.
go to the store and buy more. You can't. And then there's the later part where you talk about hosting
Mm.
and you tell a story about a birthday party and
Mhm.
you realize like what your friends and what the people around you really want is your time and your
Mhm.
attention. And something my husband and I always say is like time or love is attention and attention is love. I want to
Totally.
talk about that idea of like
Yeah.
attention and love and how they all fit
Well,
together here.
thank you so much for noticing all of that, because that really for me was the heart of the book.
Yeah.
And it's the like heart of the message for sure, and it's the way that sort of cooking has found its place back in the center of my life again, but not as, oh, I'm going to impress you with this thing I'm going to cook. It's
Mm.
really about like, how do I devote myself to the people I care about through this thing that I have. And I think for me, as and I say this like as a person who doesn't have children,
Mhm.
as a person
But there's a
who
lot of children in the
is
book, and I
trained.
wanna talk
Yes, it's
about that.
true. There are a lot of
Yeah.
kids around me,
Yeah.
but like I I understand that in a lot of ways I have a lot of privileges of time and of
Mhm.
skill and also of just like socioeconomic standing that a lot of
Sure.
folks don't necessarily do. I'm faster, it's just easier. This is my profession, so it's
Mhm.
not as hard for me to whip something up. But
Right.
even so, a lot of times it feels like a drag, right? Like, and so I
Sure.
wanted to sort of acknowledge that and like break the idea that I always feel like this is some great craft that I'm stepping into the kitchen and I feel so like oh
Oh.
yeah, like I'm doing an opera every time or something.
Right.
Yeah. And there and that's not to say that I don't think everything every time we cook needs to feel magical or sacred or anything. I eat a lot of it was really funny when we were shooting the cookbook. It was for 3 weeks we were in my house and all around and sort of like everyone moves in, the food stylist, the photographers,
Mhm.
everybody was sort of it was like a little camp. And so
Right.
people were really like I wanted them to, but they very much felt at home here and they were sort of opening every cupboard looking for stuff. And at one point, my wonderful food stylist Lillian, she opened one cupboard and she's like, "Oh my God, celebrities! They're just like us." Because I had like a Costco stack of Annie's mac and cheese boxes, and
Hey, no judgment.
I was like, "Man, I love Annie's mac and cheese."
Right.
And so there's not, I don't have some hierarchy of what it is that I believe is like good enough to serve or to
Right.
eat or cook, but it was a big like philosophical shift for me to sort of on many levels. First of all, like um I think a lot of professional cooks are very awkward people. I was just at a party yesterday of all cooks and it was my friend got like a fry pot set up outdoor. We were frying
Uh-huh.
everything. She's like, "This is kind of the perfect thing for us because like if we want to, we can come over here and fry and not have to talk to anyone. But also if we don't want to, we can go sit over there." And I think cooks are always like, "Let me go do
I'll
stuff."
be in the
So
kitchen, and
yeah,
I won't have to
totally.
talk to anyone.
Totally.
Yep.
And like it's just a nice little out.
Mhm.
And also on top of that, like we want to do it nicely. We want to make it really special for you. So there is a way like I had sort of had this skewed idea of what it meant to host people or take care of people or cook for them, which was like I'm going to do everything and like and that was my idea of hospitality was like you come over here, you don't have to do anything. I'm going to do everything and you just sit down and have a party. But if that happens, like I'm not actually at the party, right? Like
Right.
I'm running around also like in with my crazy frenetic energy that like people
Mhm.
are like, "Can I help?" And I'm like, "No, no, no."
No, I got it.
Yeah. And so and that's not actually like, parties would come and go and I'd be like, I was never there. Like I
What
would just
happened
have
at
this
that party? I don't
yeah,
even remember. I made chicken.
totally. And I kind of was like resigned to that being my experience of hosting.
Mhm.
And I just had this moment where I was cooking a kid's birthday party and the kid, Orion, was like, "Wait, where are you?" Because I was
Mhm.
still in the kitchen frying, insisting everybody else just sit down and eat their fried fish tacos. And I was like, "Oh, it's not that Orion, like the gift for Orion wasn't that I cooked this dream dinner and made this thing. It was that we're all together. Like that's the thing that's the special part of these meals." And so it's been a real slow journey for me, and I'm still not perfect at it or anything, to sort of realize like I can relinquish some of that responsibility. I can change the way I have a meal with people or have people over to make it easier on myself so that I'm actually there because then I have a nicer time, they have a nicer time. They don't feel like there's this crazy host running around. They don't feel like they're being a burden to me. And and that has been something I've really been trying to do and I think doing that sort of is this other aspect of the other thing that was kind of a big like light bulb moment for me, which was
Mhm.
my favorite meals that I can think of for the last 20 something years. I almost never remember what we ate, but I can
Mhm.
almost always remember what happened, like
Who
the
was at the
funny, yeah,
table?
or
What the
like you
vibe was?
totally, or like that's the meal where I made a total fool of myself and Greta was kicking me under the table for like not knowing such and such thing.
Right.
or like that's the time when someone had just broken up and we were all consoling him.
Mhm.
Like that those are the things. And so if I sort of looked at that a little more critically and I was like, "Oh, the food almost doesn't matter, right? It's the act of being together. It's who's around the table and the feeling we're making." And so how do I channel, that into how I cook and what I'm choosing to cook? And so there is a lot more sort of like over the course, and this probably has to do with me getting older and more tired in my body or
Mhm.
whatever. But and also the further away I get from restaurant cooking, the
Oh,
simpler
sure.
the simpler I feel like things can be. And there are things where I'm like, oh, this skill that I learned, this trick that I learned really is worth it because it yields a delicious thing. So it's worth spending
Mhm.
the extra 6 minutes on that thing or dirtying two extra bowls. But a lot of stuff's not necessarily worth it. And guess what? Like, I'm not selling this to you. Like, this is not on
Right.
a restaurant menu. I
Right.
don't, and it's okay. So I think a lot of this has just been a gentle process of like, I mean, a silly, like a tactless way of saying would be like lowering my standards, but but it's also just like being easier on myself so that
Right.
everything doesn't have to be like capital P perfect. And I thought a lot about there's a saying of like perfect is the enemy of good, you know?
Yes.
And so like and good and the whole book is like good things. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. In fact, I had written a note like several times in the book, you talk about struggling with perfection,
Mhm.
to holding yourself to professional standards at home, how you wouldn't even eat a salad at
No,
home.
yeah, totally.
You even have a paragraph in the good things are better shared section, which I want to talk about a little bit more, where you say perfect is the enemy of good. So I think there's this like, I'm someone who struggles with that in my own life. And I love to hear you talk about how you combat that idea of perfection. I think some of it is like that, like midlife kind of like, oh, I won't be here forever and what's important and how much time do I have? But I would love to
Mhm.
hear you talk about like how you combat that for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I will say a lot of it has been the further I get from being a professional cook, the
Mm-hmm.
more I interact with the people who use my recipes, the more I spend time in the homes of my friends who are not professional cooks,
Right.
and I also am fed by other people, um, especially people who have busy lives with other jobs and
Mm-hmm.
children, and I go and I'm like, "Oh my God, you can just put these things in an Instant Pot and you get this delicious thing?" Like, there are a lot of sort of aha moments for me of, "Oh,
Right.
wait a minute, like, we didn't always have everything doesn't have to be the hardest, like, or most technically correct way to
Right.
get something really nourishing, delicious, um, enjoyable, delightful on the table." So, I think being exposed to many more sort of parts of life and types of people has been
Mm-hmm.
really, really healthy for me because I spent pretty much my entire 20s and 30s like living in professional culinary world. And that was both my social life and my professional life. So I didn't
Mm-hmm.
hang out with like there just wasn't I just didn't know what non-cooks did because I just
Right.
wasn't really around any of them. And
Interesting.
and so as I have expanded outside of that, I think that's been a big sort of incredible boon for me in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And also for me as a person addressing normal, regular non-cooked people, right? Like how could I
Right.
possibly know where you're coming from if I have no exposure to you?
Sure.
And how you live your life. So that's been a huge like gift to me.
Mm-hmm.
And also just yeah, I don't know. I mean, another part of it too was for many years it sort of has shifted since the pandemic, but
Mm-hmm.
probably for 8 years before the pandemic it was kind of as I was leaving restaurants, I started working
Mm-hmm.
in an office with a bunch of other writers. Like we each all have our own little
Oh. Yeah,
office
yeah,
in
yeah.
this office building,
Yeah.
but we have like a little shared kitchen where we would heat up our food in a toaster or microwave
Yeah.
oven. And I think just seeing what people brought to work for
Oh,
lunch
sure.
and what they considered lunch was mind-blowing for me because I came from a place where like if there wasn't, two courses and a tablecloth and a bespoke dressing like that, whereas I was like, "Oh, people eat one
Rice
leftover
and
meatball."
chicken?
Yeah, totally.
Sure.
Yeah, like I'm like, "Oh, right." Like of course. So I think just having more exposure in many different
Mhm.
ways was really mind-blowing to me. and I actually talk about that a little bit in the book where I'm like, oh, I've had this kind of backward experience of
Right.
becoming like a home cook because I went straight into professional kitchens. And so it's like I'm still in some ways like learning what people cook at at age 27, you know?
Right. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's a really funny thing. But I do think for me, like a lot of what's happened in my life in the last several years is like a great deal of loss, a great deal of sort of
Mhm.
shifting in my own personal life. Like my father died.
Mhm.
I had sort of this like very belated realization and sort of grieving process for the loss of my sister, which happened as a child.
Mhm.
But I've spent a lot of time sort of alone and in grief. And I think especially when people die around you, yeah, and I've had a few other significant
Yeah.
deaths around me as well. And so I think that's very close like brush with death. And I don't think this is like original to me at all, but it
Sure.
does absolutely like really awaken you or me
Mhm.
to the preciousness of time and the fact that like I have a finite amount of time here.
Right.
And I don't think I've been operating for most of my life with that awareness sort of at the forefront of my mind.
Right.
And I've always had this idea somewhere in the back of my mind, like, oh, if I just like work really hard now and I'm good enough and I do well enough, like I'm just depositing good points into some
And you
like,
don't even have to think about.
yeah, like it's okay if I'm miserable because like I can be miserable now because later I'll be able to withdraw happiness or something
Mhm.
from the balance. And it's just been this clarity for me like, oh, there's no guaranteed later. So why am I making
Right.
myself so miserable now? And I think trying to sort of focus on even the smallest ways that I can have pleasure or happiness or joy in a day have been really helpful for me. And I think that really sort of dovetails with this idea of attention being this incredible gift that you can give to
Mhm.
people because some of the most sort of beautiful um, times in a day for me are when I'm able to slow down and just pay attention. Like in the
Mhm.
morning, I go out, I have my coffee, and I go out into the garden and I like look at what has happened in my garden, you know, just in the last day or two. And
Mhm.
people sort of our gardens on the sort of on the sidewalk,
Mhm.
and so people walking by will always joke. They'll be like, "Oh, are you looking to see what grew overnight?" And it's not exactly that. It's not that I'm like, and frankly, at this time of year, things do grow overnight. But
I was like, yeah, maybe.
but it's more that I just am like, oh, the more I can sort of slow down and pay attention to like how this garden reacts to the sun and which direction things want to grow. Like, oh my, and also so much of actually getting to harvest your vegetables is like really getting kind of like a goggles on, you know, like cucumbers sort of you have to go hunting for them.
Mhm.
There's things where a squash, if you like don't peel your eyes, like you'll come back and the squash will be, you know, 3 feet long.
Ginormous,
Yeah.
and then
And
it's not gonna
so, and
taste
you're like,
good,
how
and
did
it's
I miss
turned
that
yellow.
yesterday?
Right.
Totally. And so, there's just these ways where it's a very good training for me because I tend to live very much in my head. I go, you know, a million miles an hour. I want to get all the things done and go to all the places and talk to all the people. So it's any practice where I can slow down. And for me, cooking is that too. I think a lot of yesterday I was cooking in the morning a bunch of stuff and I was so sort of harried until I got down into the kitchen. And then I had been listening to like podcasts and stuff, and I didn't even turn on any music or anything. And I actually really appreciated how quiet it was. And I was there for a couple hours, just like doing whatever I was doing, washing dishes. And it was all sort of fueled very much with this idea of like, I'm making this stuff to bring and share with my friends, and I'm trying to imbue in it this like lovely energy and peace that I
Mhm.
have right now. And let me look, oh, these blueberries are so perfect right now. What's the best thing I can do with them? I was making hummus and I was out of lemons and I was trying to figure out like, should I walk to the store? And then I realized, oh, I have preserved lemon. And there's
There
all
you
these
go.
like little moments that I have these it's a real victory in my heart when I can figure out how to like make a whole bunch of stuff without leaving my house.
Without
You
having
know?
to go to the store.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Without
Yep.
go I'm like,
Yep.
yes!
Yeah.
You know, and so I had all of these things. I made all these things and I never had to leave the house and it felt so exciting. And that's like those things are the moments of joy for me. You know, and then I brought the things to the party and I was like, look, like these cucumbers are all from my garden, like 20 cucumbers I harvested today. So it there's that's kind of the thing that I'm trying to imbue in the book is like it doesn't have to be capital F fancy. It doesn't have to be impressive. It can just be like the actual act is enough. And the sharing is enough.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also doesn't even have to be for anyone else. It can just be for yourself. Like
I am a
and
person worth
yeah,
treating nicely.
totally. And so that is sort of at the heart of what it is like these things are delicious, they're simple, and it gives me pleasure to share them with you, and may it also give you pleasure to cook them and share them with yourself or with other people.
Oh, it's so lovely. And one point in there's a chapter about community and
Mhm.
community building. And, you talk about the importance of letting others care for you, which is
Mhm.
hard for some of us.
Really
And
hard.
you
Yeah.
talk about this concept of holiness,
Mhm.
not religion, but
Yeah.
holiness. And I hear you talking about that now as you talk about the like truly embodied experience of cooking. Cause like your hands are busy. And so you're not scrolling, you're
Exactly.
not zoning out and doing all that. You're in your body, you're doing that
Mhm.
thing, you're having that holy experience.
Totally.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, in some ways that chapter, like I keep saying is the heart of, I'm like everything's the heart of the book. That's a different heart of the book.
Right.
But and the sort of the reason I was moved to write that chapter is
Hmm.
that the last several years I've like developed and really like held to this tradition with my friends of having dinner once a week on Mondays. And
Hmm.
um it doesn't sound like a lot, and also it has become the heart of our lives. It has become sort of, we call it like, we'll call it sometimes like Monday dinner is our church or Monday dinner is our
Right.
religion. And it didn't, we never set out to do that. I think it sort of happened accidentally. We were all a little bit like looking for something as we were coming out of the shutdown and the pandemic to like
Hmm.
bring us together. This is a group of friends. It's all the people I listed in the dedication actually who I dedicated the
Hmm.
book to.
Yeah.
But before that, and I've known many of the people for like close to 20 years, but they were not, I would call like the closest people to me in my life. And so it's been interesting to witness our relationship sort of really deepen just by proximity. And like
And the
these kids
practice,
and the
like
practice,
just the
exactly,
practice, right?
totally, and the ritualization of it. And so
Hmm.
we think and talk a lot about what this dinner has done for our lives. And like it just feels sort of like it seems insane that one having dinner once a week with people would shift so much about your life in this way, but it really has for us. And so I wanted to think about why our ritual works and why other ones in my life that I've tried to create haven't worked. And I know it's a thing a lot of people try to do is like have a meal, a
Yeah.
monthly meal with people, and it doesn't work. And so one of the books that was really like a foundational text for me in this time and for this book and for this ritual has been,
Hmm.
it's this funny little book called The Sabbath, and it's
Oh,
by
yeah.
Abraham Joshua Heschel, who was like a
Hmm.
mid-century rabbi philosopher. He was a contemporary of Martin Luther King. He was
Hmm.
really like an incredible person, and it's just like a little teeny tiny book. And his premise is basically like that, you know, Judaism is not a religion of things; it is a
Hmm.
religion of space, of time. And so, and that the act of holding to, for Jewish people, to holding to the
The
Sabbath
Sabbath.
um like a foundational sort of like tent pole
Hmm.
of this religion. And so he goes on to describe all of these sort of incredible benefits. and
Great.
and and then I like so I spent a lot of time thinking about Sabbaths and rituals. And there's another really wonderful book. There's a journalist named Judith Shulevitz, and she wrote a book called The Sabbath World. And there's
Uh-huh.
an episode of Ezra Klein's podcast
Oh, yeah, yeah.
where he has her on, and they
Uh-huh.
actually discuss this book by Abraham, and and she's kind of, I almost think of her as like a Sabbath expert. And
Uh-huh.
so this episode I listened to so many times, and they talk about really thoughtfully in this thing, like, because he asks, he's like, people out there, we're all out there lost, many of us don't really practice religion in this like
Right.
modern Western world. So what is there that we can learn from and take from religion to you
To our
know,
secular
it,
lives, to our daily lives.
exactly,
What can we build into that
totally.
practice?
And so, and how come, like, say when someone tries to do like a digital detox or a digital Sabbath, it doesn't work? And she says very clearly, she's like, well, a Sabbath should be something to look forward to, and you have to create a
Oh.
holiness around it. But a
Mhm.
digital detox is about like not, it's about what you're
What you're
um
giving up.
giving up, exactly.
Yeah.
And so for
Sacrifice.
one, and I think the act of making, like for us, making Monday dinners, like it's in our calendars, it's something we look forward to. For the kids in the families, like it's kind of like they're so excited. They're always like, what are we going to have this time? And there now we have like there's always like entertainment portion of the night where the kids do a performance. We
Oh,
all
yeah.
we often do arts and crafts together. We
Yep.
harvest flowers from the garden. There's a real sort of ritualization that has happened over time. It's where we take out like our favorite plates and napkins or any, for me it's like, as a person who lives by myself, it's an opportunity to cook all of the grand sort of sharing things that I
Mhm.
I love cooking but don't usually can't eat by myself.
Right.
And
Right.
so I think we sort of stumbled into a ritualization of it. And one of the things that I love is they're like, oh, when in, say, in Judaism, when
Mhm.
you're in a devout community, everyone practices the Sabbath. So say if you're a shopkeeper, you don't feel like you're going to miss out on sales because the other shops are going to be open and you're going to be closed, because
Everybody's closed on the
everybody's
Sabbath.
closed. And so there's kind of a group buy-in to the thing. And I think we as a group really have had that buy-in from the beginning, where we've all committed that this is what happens on Mondays and it happens in this place. And like that's kind of, we just don't schedule other stuff on Mondays.
And like, if you do it every week, like if someone's out of town for work, it's fine. You missed one
Exactly.
week, but you
Totally.
always know it's Monday. You know not to schedule. Like, it's just that practice of doing it every
Totally. So
week. I love that.
I tried to distill sort of what I've learned and make almost like a rubric for
You
people
did. Yeah.
that and put it in the book in case that was something that appealed to you.
I will tell you it appealed to me, and I will tell you you inspired me. So last night, I used to do this when our kids were little. We called it Breakfast Club, and we did it once a month, and it was a very
Amazing.
similar situation. And it made me be like, oh, I should bring back, because the kids went to bed at like 6:30, so we couldn't do dinner. We had to do breakfast.
I
But it
love that.
made me think like, oh, I should do it again and do it weekly, and whoever shows up, and
That's
see what
awesome.
happens. So last night I made dinner, all recipes from the book. I
Oh,
had friends over, and we all worked together. It was delightful.
awesome.
And I want you to know I'm never going to make garlic bread another way
Oh, you
again.
made the garlic bread. Awesome.
Oh,
It
it
was
was so
so
good.
fun.
It
Yeah.
was insane and it was fun to make.
Yeah.
And it was
And then
again
the
that
pulling it apart
idea.
at the table.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like it was the idea of like, oh, I've never cut my garlic bread this way.
Mhm.
Why not?
Totally. That was real mind-blowing for me. I was like, "Why
Right.
wouldn't I cut it this way?" Yeah.
Right. And I also want you to know for dessert, you kind of alluded to it earlier in conversation. I think you call them like small good things. It's not like
Mhm.
a recipe. It's just
Totally.
like,
Just like,
here's a paragraph of some ideas. Here's how you could do it differently. So we had strawberries with
"Oh,
sour
brown
cream.
sugar and sour cream. So good."
Samin! Oh my gosh. So my husband and my friends were all like, did you say sour cream?
I
That
know.
sounds disgusting. And I was
I
like,
know.
well, we're going to trust her. Every single one of us, our minds were blown.
It's
Like,
so good. My
it's
friend
my
Greta gave
new
me that. Yeah.
jam. It's
It's
so
so good.
good. I was like, how does it work? Is it like the acid of the sour
I think
cream and
so,
the
and the fat,
sweetness?
yeah.
Yeah.
But also
It was
I like that the brown sugar, like, you kinda have to do the brown sugar at the last second so it doesn't
yes.
dissolve, so you get that
Yes.
crunch. Yeah, it's
Yes.
so good.
Oh,
Oh, I'm so
genius.
glad you did that.
Oh, it was so fun. It was so lovely. If all podcast prep was that delicious and enjoyable. But I love the book so much. I've enjoyed this conversation so
Thank
very
you. Me
much. Thank you
too.
so much. Is there anything else you want people to know about good things that we haven't discussed yet? I feel like we've talked about a
No,
lot.
you really, like, I'm so grateful to you for really sitting with the book and seeing, like, the message and the thing that I care about, like, just trying to get across to people. Like, I was so insecure for so long that I wasn't making, some genius work of something
Hmm.
to follow up Salt Fat. And I think at some point, especially when we were doing the photos, I had this sort of revelation of like, oh, I am really proud of this. And I think it's so personal.
It's
It's
so
so the
personal.
things in my
Yeah.
home, and it's the things I cook and my dog and my dirty kitchen.
Hmm.
And like it's just the reality of my life that I'm sharing. And all I can hope is that will, you know, um be a kindness to people, or like a service or an inspiration or
Mhm.
something. And so it just makes me feel so happy that that you really like took away what I was hoping someone would take away. So thank you.
Yeah, you should be proud. It was lovely and it really touched me, and I just thought it's really special. So I'm
Thank
so
you.
excited for the book. So thank you for being with us, Samin.
Thank you for having me.
Hello, readers. It's time for another TBR Top Off. We're going to recommend a couple of great books to pick up when you stop in for your copy of our book of the year, Good Things by Samin Nosrat. I'm Mark at my Barnes & Noble in Cincinnati, but I'm going to have my book buddy Donald in Detroit kick us off. Hey, Donald.
Hey, Mark. Hey, everybody. So, Good Things is just the perfect gift book of the year, right? It's got something for everybody. That's one of the things that we look at for our book of the year, something that you can give to anybody, a friend, a relative, a stranger, help a customer out, find that perfect book that really can touch the hearts and, when it comes to cookbooks, our stomachs. So I was looking for the same type of book, but one that I know that I could recommend to a lot of my family. And I'm from the South. So I was looking at Measure with Your Heart, which is by Hannah Taylor, but she's known online as Lily Laute. She's got her own social media presence. But it's filled with 100 free-spirited, comforting recipes that are Southern style dishes that really speak about love, about family, about connection, community, and how we need food to live better lives, to be healthy, but also healthy in our spirit and our soul, as well as our physical health. It's got a lot of the same charm that Good Things has, a lot of anecdotes, lots of great pictures of food, but also just a lot of great pictures of family and friends as well. Beautiful pictures of the food. I'm going to show you one here of just this little girl by a chicken coop. So a lot of like really fun little things. Really easy down home recipes too. So we're not talking about anything complicated. This is all really easy, simple. Again, Southern home cooking to feed your family and soul. And again, Lily Lute, that's what she's known for online, but her name is Hannah Taylor, and that is Measure with Your Heart. Mark, what do you have to recommend for us today?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a nice, solid gift for the season, too. First of all, I'm so excited that Good Things won our gift book of the year. Samin Nosrat is absolutely incredible, and this book is just perfect for anyone's home. But if you are looking for an extra gift for someone's kitchen, I'm going to recommend Start Here: Instructions for Becoming a Better Cook by the wonderful Sola El Whaley. I love this book so much. Like Samin, Sola has this great online presence. Her YouTube partnership with the New York Times is absolutely fantastic. And she's really one of those chefs, very much like Samin, who is just cool. Somebody you want to spend time with, somebody who enjoys food genuinely and just loves talking about it. Start Here was a huge deal when it was released in 2023. It was a New York Times bestseller, a Best Book of the Year by a bunch of different channels, and won the James Beard Foundation Award for Best Cookbook of the Year. And the accolades are just plentiful, and for good reason. This book is just fantastic. Sola's approach to food is practical and encouraging for beginners. It's methodical and deep for those more confident in the kitchen. And my favorite part is the get loose sections near each recipe, where she has kind of a playfulness and a fun approach for anyone who wants to know the rules of cooking, but is willing to and wants to bend them. She has a lot of different variations on how to make things delicious and then make it even more delicious. The seared and braised chicken thighs recipe with the zucchini is insane. And then she throws in a bunch of variations that you can play around with it. I just think this is a cookbook that belongs in every kitchen because you can do so much with it. You can make grand meals, you can make small snacks. And again, her passion for food is just a bliss fest. The recipes are excellent, and she just builds your confidence really easily. Plus, the best bonus is Samin Nosrat provides the foreword for this book. So it is, without question, one of the best companions to go along with Good Things. So there's no reason not to couple these two together for your favorite chef for the holidays. And that is Start Here by Sola El-Waylly. But guess what, everybody? That's all we have for today. Thanks so much for tuning in to Poured Over. Please make sure to give us a rating and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. You can also follow us on our socials at Barnes & Noble. Pretty simple. I'm Mark. You can follow my home store at BN Westchester. Donald, where can we find you?
You can follow my store at BN Livonia.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Happy reading and happy cooking. Bye.
Thank you for listening. Poured Over is a Barnes & Noble production. To help other readers find us, please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.